because dogs are a mirror to your behavior. When you're upset, when you're busy, agitated, anxious, all the normal things we feel, they pick right up on it, and they'll really mirror you.
The big question is this: how do we take a seemingly ordinary world and make it beyond extraordinary? In yoga, there is so much more than meets the eye, and it's not just the things we do on our yoga mats that make the biggest difference. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name is Austin Bitsis, and welcome to Life as a Secret Yogi. Welcome to Life as a Secret Yogi yoga podcast. Stefanie Corbeil, thank you for joining me on today's show to talk about your life as a secret yogi. However, today's episode is a special one and that I'm super excited for. It's all about dog yoga. More specifically, your process to dog yoga you call TAO Dog Yoga. We're also going to cover topics such as animals and the roots of yoga, the yogic lessons we can learn from our dogs, and any questions you, the audience, may be having around dog yoga. So if you're listening right now and most likely have a dog or thinking about getting a dog in the future and are going to leave, you're going to leave with a head full of knowledge and actionable steps you can implement today or as soon as your pup joins the fam. So side note, if you haven't left a rating or review, please do so. It's the best way to support the show and in producing future content. So for everyone who's already left a review, I greatly appreciate it, and I'll make sure to pay it back tenfold. So Steph, thanks so much for joining us on the show. For everyone who doesn't know, Stefanie Corbeil, she is both dog trainer, yoga teacher, and founder of TAO Dog Yoga, and the perfect person to cover this topic. So, Steph, how are you doing today?
I'm awesome. It's great to be here, and Tao's with me today too, of course. So happy to be joining you.
Awesome. I'm super grateful for your time today. And so my audience are those that want to take the practice of yoga and meditation, among other related tools, into the real world. It's a lot of people who are looking to perform at a higher level in other practices such as running, golf, art, music, entrepreneurship, dog training, and so on, or simply those who just want to live a beautiful life. And the audience does not necessarily have the desire to become a stereotypical yogi or yoga teacher. Nevertheless, the audience would like to utilize the tools of yoga and meditation to make life beautiful. And in short, the message of the secret yogi is that we all have this heroic self, our inner source that we cultivate through the tools of yoga to make a seemingly ordinary world extraordinary. It's that we all have this innate superhero that lives within. And yoga and meditation allows us to tap into our superpowers, just to list a few, being mindfulness, awareness, love, focus, and creating happiness within, and ultimately removing physical tension to feel good in a body that we love. Why this episode is so important to me is twofold. First, I've had a deep passion and love for animals ever since I've been young. I got my first snake when I was 7 for my 7th birthday, and my parents gave me the choice between snake or a birthday party. Long story short, I got the snake. And before long, I had 2 snakes and then 10. So by middle school, I had my own little zoo with over 50 reptiles, amphibians, arachnids, and yes, even tarantulas. This is not counting my family's hamsters, cats, 2 dogs, 1 Rocky, a retriever rescue, and Princess, a plot hound rescue. Before long, my mom showed me how her electric bill had skyrocketed tenfold from all the heat lamps, not to mention the cost of the food and the supplies, and for my not so little zoo. And being a little bit of a nerd, I had spreadsheets for everything. I had mountains of books I've read on every type of animal, a lot of them either behind me or underneath my desk right now. And I decided to buy an incubator for about $100 off Craigslist and started breeding my snakes. And before long, I created a barter system with the local reptile center who knew me well by this point. And this covered the cost of food and supplies and any extra offspring. As I started building the business, I covered the cost of my expensive passion and a little bit more. So this technically was my first business. And why I share this with the audience and yourself, Steph, is that over time, my passion for running and my busy academic schedule took over, not to mention moving off to college. And so I had to sell out of my business and my passion. After college, when I moved into the city, I had this deep feeling that like something was missing in my life. And unfortunately, I didn't have the time or the space for any animals as I was running another company I started and working a corporate career. Even back at my family's home, sadly, it was around the time when my two dogs passed away at the old ages of 18 and 14. But it was sad. This was the first time in my life that I literally had no animal connection, no connection to even nature as I was living in the urban jungle in the city. I didn't even have a plant, and I was living in the cities, so that the most nature I really saw were the trees that come out of, those like 2x2 holes in the sidewalk. I really missed how connected with nature and my animals I was. And they taught me so much about awareness, and my dogs taught me so much about unconditional love. And I'm sure a lot of you listening can relate in your own unique way, even so much as to going for a walk in the park just to clear your head. So, long story short, besides going to every local dog show and rescue I could when I got the chance, or escaping the city to go on hikes or to the beach to get my nature fix and recharge, I worked really hard. And just recently, this year, I moved into a new place and have both the time and the space, again, to introduce nature and a connection with animals again into my life. So, this brings me to my second point of why this episode is so important. I would like to take the audience through my journey of adopting my puppy and doing yoga with my dog. I absolutely can't wait to get a puppy, and because there's no other bond with an animal that I've found than the bond with your canine family member. I'm being super patient, making sure it's the right mutual fit. So, all the topics we talk about today are super relevant. Plus, I just adopted a kitten named Buddha, and I should have named him Tarzan because he's kind of crazy a few weeks ago, and he acts like a dog. So maybe this episode will be good for those cat owners too. And we'll see. But right now, my girlfriend and I are trying to train little Buddha to go to the bathroom on the toilet. So far, it's working. And I've also tried a little bit of clicker training with him. I don't know if that's working, but stay tuned on the progress, and updates will be on Instagram with all the progress. So, the lessons we learn in yoga and meditation come naturally to animals. From movement to awareness, they are way more connected to the world around us. So, Steph, let's jump right in. And first and foremost, can you tell us about Tao, your canine sidekick, and how did he join the family?
So I love nothing more than to talk about dogs and yoga. So you're going to have to cut me off, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, we could keep going. I mean, I could go on forever too about this topic. So
Yeah.
it's great.
So Tao Dog Yoga is where dog training meets yoga, or where yoga meets dog training. So in Tao Dog Yoga, we really do yoga. We actually do a full practice where we work on breathing techniques and a physical practice, asana, as well as working with our dogs. So we're training them while we're doing that. And that sounds kind of wild. And your first class does feel a little bit like that when you and your dog are trying to figure it out. And then we go through a series of, calm touch exercises and stretching with our canines. That brings me to why it's called Tao Dog Yoga, right? So my dog Tao, she's an 8-year-old German Shepherd. She was raised to be a guide dog, and then became a breed dog for a guide dog school, and now is retired to me. And so she's lived with me since she was 8 years old. And our lifestyle is very active. So we do a ton of hiking together. She comes to the beach with me. Like everywhere I go, she comes, which means I'm always moving. And, even if I'm working with private dog training clients, she's there helping me. So she's just always with me. What happens in a relationship with your dog when you're always doing training, moving, is your dog doesn't really know how to settle well. And what I found with Tao and I, she was about 5 when I finally said, I met a friend for coffee, and we walked, it was a shopping center, right? It was a coffee shop. We're sitting outside, and I'm like, this dog's trained. Like, she's gone through so many different things with me. And I sat down, and she would not settle. She just kept, being like, what are we doing? Standing up, checking in with me, all the things. And I realized what I had done is, in my relationship with her, being so active and being so on myself, is I activated her, and that's everything we did. So I put the leash on and she thinks we're going, we're doing, which is an awesome thing that you can do with your dogs. But it really dawned on me that day that as much training and even as a professional trainer, I'm like, wow, I missed this huge gap in my relationship with my dog. But it was almost like holding a mirror up to myself. And I'm like, man, Stefanie, you don't relax, do you? And when you sit with that, the answer is no, I don't do enough of that. And that's my work. And that's, I say, part of my yoga in my daily life is finding pockets in my day to check back in with myself. And my dogs help me do that. Because dogs are a mirror to your behavior. When you're upset, when you're busy, agitated, anxious, all the normal things we feel, they pick right up on it and they'll really mirror you. So that's my first moment where I was like, this is, I got to change this. So I started to work with her, adding relaxing into our routine. And at the same time, my yoga practice, I've been practicing for 16 years now, been working with animals for about 17. And it didn't really dawn on me in that moment, like how profound yoga could be, until I started to really get more into a different phase of my own practice and my own journey, doing my yoga teacher training, and just got into this really different place with myself and the work I was doing on myself, that I was like, yeah, I think like dogs and yoga makes sense. And I think the biggest thing is we need to support people. We need to teach people how to regulate themselves, how to be energetic and have, a flow practice and be in their bodies and feel their bodies, but at the same time be giving off really calm energy, which sounds contradictory, but it can be done, and it is in all of our classes. And there's also a calming aspect in teaching people how to breathe. So once I had that kind of moment where I'm like, I need to incorporate this, Tao and I started practicing alone. And so I practiced at home with her in quiet environments. Obviously, I tried it off leash, on leash. I try on our hikes. So go to mountaintop and do yoga. At first, that wasn't very successful because she thinks hiking is just being free and wild, which is fine. She'll come when she's called, of course, and pay attention to me, but that's her time just to sniff and be a dog. And also the beach was very challenging because she loves running in the waves and all of that. So our practice is a little bit different on the beach and hiking, but we're still working it. And I still think there is a way to incorporate that with the training that happens in Tao Dog classes. So that's a little bit about how it came about. And it was about, I want to say, a year and a half ago, actually. So this is kind of a new thing to try out on people. I got a group of 8 people that I know were going to be really truthful and that were also super supportive. And so I recommend to anybody trying something new, you really want a group that's not only going to be like, yeah, this is awesome, this works, but is also going to look at you and say, this really didn't work. We need more to that. We need more feedback. Like, you need to give us a cue here or that. And so that group really changed everything for teaching dog yoga for me. If not for them, I wouldn't be where I'm at with it and the programs that I'm starting to even evolve and create now. So soon after starting. And that was really important, but tested it out on a group. And the first class I taught, I was like, this works. I can see it in the dogs and see it in the people, and you could feel it. And I think as a yoga teacher, when you're teaching a group, there is that collective energy.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And what's fascinating about it is there's a collective energy with the dogs, and they have their own social aspect of the class. So a lot of times when one dog is getting up, a next dog will get up, and then that one lays down, and then they're like, oh, we're both supposed to lay down. And then you always have the one in the group where everyone's laying down and calm, and he's looking around the room and going, do you want to play with me? Do you? And
I feel like the dog. That's like how my mind works. It's like, you want to play with me?
Like,
You want to play with me? You want to play ball? You want to go for a run? You want to do yoga?
That's exactly. I'm pretty social too when I get to a yoga class, and I'm like, I gotta say hi to everyone around me, and then we can practice. And it's fascinating because that dog will get the social cues from the other dogs, and eventually we'll be like, oh, this laying down thing, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And they work through it. So there's so much going on in these classes that it's hard to even quantify what's really happening. But I think the biggest thing, and what's so important to me, is we really are training our dogs and conditioning our dogs in this class. And we are really changing ourselves with the yoga. And I think that's what separates Tao Dog Yoga from a lot of dog yoga out there. Because of my background of really understanding yoga and having an in-depth practice in yoga, and also just my experience with animals and the array of experience I have, understanding what really dogs like, how they like to be touched, how they like to move in their bodies, how they naturally move. So we support their natural movement. And I think that knowledge is really key. There's a lot of different dog yoga out there. And people will pick up dogs and kind of bring them over their head and stuff, and small dogs.
Yeah.
And I could not do that with my 65-pound shepherd, nor would she really like it.
Yeah. And that's a huge part of this episode that I wanted to kind of touch upon, is like demystifying dog yoga. Because a lot of people think of dog yoga, they scroll on Instagram and it's like picking them up over their head or doing unnatural movements. Like a lot of the yoga asanas are meant for humans. They're not meant for dogs. Like dogs move in a totally different way. Their biomechanics is totally different than humans. I mean, yeah, okay, we have downward dog. I mean, there's a similarity, but like, what about like cobra pose? Like cobra pose is not dog bend back pose. so definitely. And I kind of like how you're talking about it. It seems to be more of like an energy thing, which yoga really is. I mean, the poses are just a physical expression of what's going on in our bodies. And that's kind of where this seems like it's more focusing on off the mat, but focusing also on just calming our bodies and this collective energy, as you called it. And dogs are so much more responsive to the energy around us, which we could all learn from. And so it's really nice to be able to like demystify what dog yoga is. I'm sure a lot of people, even like clicking on this podcast, thought we were talking about something totally different. And this is great that we're touching upon it right in the beginning, because we're clearing the air, like what it truly is and what yoga truly is. That's like the bigger kind of umbrella of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think in the one thing as you were talking that came up for me is the word trust. Mm-hmm. And as a yoga teacher, and I'm sure you experience this teaching yoga, is the first thing I want is people to feel safe. And when someone comes in for the first time to a dog yoga class with me, now they're trusting you with their dog, which for us with animals and animal lovers, that's, I think, sometimes even bigger for people at first than themselves. They're like, I want to make sure my dog is okay, and then I'll take care of myself. So in TAO Dog Yoga, we do both. And that's very important that I talk, to not only the dogs and what they need, but also what the people need. But that trust, when somebody comes in, I want to keep people's dogs safe. So everything we do is keeping them safe. I want people to be in their bodies, but safe in their bodies, but also free to express, right? So we keep the dogs safe, we keep people safe with, the alignment and all the key things that work for each of their bodies. But then the expression comes in, right? Some dogs will bark through class and I'm like, that's fine. We all have dogs, like nobody cares. And someone's like, but he's barking and it's upsetting someone's practice. I'm like, honestly, everyone's so focused on what they're doing, they don't even hear him. Like, and you'll ask people at the end of class, they don't hear. So there is room for expression and working through things, like both with us and the dogs. But I think that's what sets it apart, is I really want people to know that TAO Dog Yoga means you get to express yourself, but you're also safe and your dogs are taken care of. And all of my instruction is geared toward that, so that, we're not moving dogs in an uncomfortable way. And you can see it in a lot of pictures, and there's a lot of fancy stuff on Facebook and Instagram now. And I sometimes struggle with that a little bit, because some of the dogs don't look comfortable. And my knowledge of dogs, they aren't comfortable, if you're grabbing them under the armpits and lifting them up, right, into like a sun salutation, right, a tall mountain. Idea that you're stretching their back. It's like, oh, there's such like awesome ways to stretch their back and their neck and their core, like work. I mean, like I said, I could go on all day.
Yeah, definitely. And we could touch upon some of that stuff like later on.
Sure. I think that's the thing is a lot of people, and what the message getting out there is the dog yoga. People are clicking on it and there's that big question mark. Like, what is this? Is it like goat yoga where the dogs wander around? Is my dog going to be safe? Am I going to be able to relax? And to even get people to step into my class or take my class on YouTube or take my class, on a Zoom or a Facebook Live, like, is so big for me. And I think it takes so much courage to walk in with your dog, especially if you've never done yoga before, and make yourself that vulnerable. So I say it's the bravest group of people I've ever taught Dog-wise or yoga, and also the most loving people that I've ever met. But yeah, I think that takes a lot of courage, and I think there's not enough information about it. And I think, like I was saying, this is different. There is
Yeah,
something
no,
about
no,
it.
definitely. And I think it's the expectation of when somebody's clicking on dog yoga, it's like they have the expectation of something completely different than what it is. And if they don't have a background, say, knowing kind of how yoga really works and what the true message of yoga and meditation and mindfulness and awareness is, they might be expecting something totally different and something more theatrical and something that's not as meaningful, and it might defer people right away. So it's like educating people and doing kind of conversations like this and integrating the two is super important to get the message out there that it's so much more than that. And this is truly beneficial to mutually for both human and canine. So, can we go a little bit more into your background? So, you're both yoga teacher and dog trainer, and to me, that's like the perfect career. I would absolutely love that. So, you've been doing that for a while, and you talked a little bit about the fusion. What is your purpose, and like as I call it in yoga, like your dharma? Has it like changed over the years? Like, where do you kind of pull your energy from now?
I think a lot of my meditation happens. So it's, not directly talking about, exactly what you're asking, but
Mhm.
my practice, absolutely. I'm 36 now. I started yoga when I was 20. And why I started yoga was at that time in my life, I was not allowed to do vigorous exercise per my doctor. And I had to find an alternative. And I grew up doing ballet and dancing, just recreationally, not professionally or anything. And I loved movement, and that's the way I express myself. And so I was so fortunate at 20 to walk into a studio and have an awesome teacher. It was just, I lucked out and had this really awesome teacher who taught a strong physical practice, but like was just so connected in the breath work. And it was just a game changer. I was hooked. I mean, sometimes I would go see, like on Sundays, like I was in college, so I'd go to yoga, do my homework, and then go to yoga on Sundays. And that was like my Sunday. And it was just like awesome. And then over the years, she shifted gears and decided to sell the studio after a couple years. And then I kind of went on this journey of trying different yoga styles and different teachers. And at times felt like my practice was really strong and I was very connected. And then it would kind of wane, where I might go a couple months without being in a class. I hadn't developed a home practice of meditation or yoga yet. And there was a lot of self-judgment during that time of putting so much pressure on me that it made it so hard to get back into. Whereas now, if like I miss a class, I'm like, I just roll my mat out and I put music on, I just do yoga. And I'm like, that's yoga, right? Like I let go of that. Or, I let yoga be in my daily life. So I think that's the shift. It used to be, you need to go to class to do this thing that makes you feel great. But in between that gaps, there were a lot of lulls, a lot of down times, and sometimes it's hard to show up because you're working through something really difficult in your life. And I think that's when you need the yoga the most. And that's what I've learned as I've grown. But during that time, I didn't, I was too scared to face what I wasn't ready yet. But now my yoga is, and that's why I love this podcast so much. And I was so pumped when you reached out to me, is yoga is for all of us in how we want it to be and how we want to bring it into our lives. So I had a teacher during my yoga teacher training that said, she taught us we spent like a day on just meditation and talking about meditation and ways to meditate. And, you can put a candle and meditate with a candle. Some people meditate with music. Some people do guided meditation. And, I thought long and hard because that was another place of judgment for me. Is like I said, I don't sit still a lot. Quieting my mind is hard. And I was like, I don't meditate. And then she goes, well, you come to yoga class and you move in your body, and moving in your body is meditation. I'm like, oh. And then I'm like, well, if I move in my body and that's meditation, this is cool. I move a lot. So where else am I meditating? And my meditation, right, for me, it taps back into my dogs. My dogs are all off leash trained. So me being in the woods, moving through space, one foot, it's like that rhythm of hiking, right? One foot, the other foot, one foot, the other foot. And just no noise, just me and my dogs moving through space together is absolutely my meditation. And when I start to fall off, instead of saying, Stefanie, you need to go upstairs for 8 minutes, I load my dogs in the car, or I walk down the street to the hiking trails, and I'm just like I go for as long as I want. I never set a time frame on it. I try not to do that. I try to say if it's 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. But a lot of times I'll be like, I'm going to go for 20 minutes and I'm out there like an hour and a half and it's starting to get dark. And I'm like, oh, this just feels great. So that's my meditation. I think that would be, a takeaway in why my two worlds, like I'm awesomely blessed, like to be able to do my two passions and it's my life. Like I very rarely do things that I don't want to do. It's weird, but it's awesome. And I encourage everyone to move in that direction. And then teaching people and showing other people and people that have never done yoga. And within a year of practicing with me with the dog yoga, it's like, I just see the changes in their life and they'll come to me and be like, I know it's because of the yoga that this happened, or I reacted to this differently. Or I had someone who took an 8-week class with me and she goes, you know what I do? She's an animal control officer. She goes, I sit in my van in between my calls or before I walk into a house and I do like 8 breaths. And I was like, that's it. That is yoga. And that moved me as much as somebody doing a handstand for the first time. Right? I was like, you get it. It's all yoga and handstands are awesome. And I'm working at it.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, like that is it. And so my whole world, like how I've been able to find myself and grow is with animals. Like I have a vast array of experience, and I do include that on my website, on my bio, because there's just so much. Like, do you want to talk about sheltering? Do you want to talk about breeding? Do you want to talk about puppies? Do we want to talk about working as a veterinary technician?
Okay, we'll do it all. Okay.
Yeah. we'll have a series, like we have 10-part series.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just all of it for me, all of it matters. And I think that's the thing about yoga. There's no wrong in yoga. Like if someone sits down and teaches me something new, now I just show up at a class and I'm open. I'm like, whatever you're going to teach me, there's no good or bad, right or wrong. I'm going to take what works and I'm kind of going to leave what doesn't land for me. But that's the same thing with animals. And I think when you're deeply, deeply passionate and, a little bit driven, being with animals, it's like, I am at a place in my career with animals where I've put myself in a position where I'm, the manager of a breed program for a guide dog school, which every day I'm humbled, so you think, okay, I've got this much experience behind me. So I'm taking on this role now. I've been asked to take this on and sought out for it. Like, that's great. That's a great honor. I am humbled by the dogs every single day. And I think that's how you're where you need to be. That's my life's work. My life's work is to do stuff with animals. And how I landed here, I look back on it. And during those times, getting to this point was confusing. I'm like, I don't know. I thought about leaving it for a while because I was kind of in a stuck place. And so I just stepped into a different role with it, moved around a bit, took those scary leaps that I needed to do to grow. And then it came full circle to where I am now. And I feel the same way about yoga. I feel like I could feel it in my bones. I feel yoga like in my core, in my soul, in my bones. And I feel dogs. It's part of who I am now. And I don't know how to live without it. People go to their job every day and they're like, this is my job and I do this and I get a paycheck, which we all need to do. And that's challenging when you do that with your passion. And, that's a whole separate topic. And I think we've talked a little bit prior to this about, making your passion your job and like, how do you do that? And for some people, it works really, really well. And for other people, it's better to have a job that you go to and you excel at and you do well at. And then it's also good to have your passions, and those are just your passions. So it's not meant for everybody to make their passions their like livelihood and their everything. But if it is in you, like I encourage you to do it and just to keep like taking those steps that you need. When I was younger in my 20s, I'd be at a job for like 6 months and I'm like, I'm bored. And when, you're 20, 21, 22, I was like much more impulsive, right? So I'm like, am I just impulsive? And then there comes the judgment, right? All the rest of my friends have been at their jobs for 2 years and I'm at this for 6 months and I'm bored. And it's like, now I look back and I'm like, no, because like you give like all of yourself to this. You go home and you study about it. You're not just working in a vet hospital, doing your job and then being like, I'm off. It's like, I just like couldn't get enough. And then once I mastered that, I was like, I need to take this and now I'm going to try something new and I'm going to master that. And now the role I have is everything. Like my daily life, I do veterinary care. I do breeding. I whelp litters of puppies. I do training. I evaluate dogs. I evaluate litters. I evaluate dogs from puppyhood all the way to adulthood. Everything in my background has come full circle to now what I'm doing. So like, I look back on that and like, it was good that I moved around, and that's who I am. And that's okay. I'm not like everybody, but that's what makes me able to do what I'm doing now. But that takes time, you know? So I always think about when I'm teaching yoga to 20 people in that age range, sometimes it's in your 30s, sometimes it's in your 50s when you're like, yeah, now's the time. I've had this passion and drive and I'm going to do it. You know, I'm going for it. I know vets, people that went back to vet school, I think they were in their 50s and they're like, I've always wanted to be a vet and like, I'm doing it. It's like, good for you. Like to take that leap. But I always like speaking to audiences where you're not sure, you're right. Like, is what I'm doing okay? Like I'm not staying at jobs more than a year and a half. Does that look good on your resume? We get so caught up in all those labels. And sometimes you look back and you're like, that's exactly what I needed. I'm so glad I trusted my instinct to move on when I did. But right, there's like that old saying, like if we had known then what we know now. You know?
Yeah. And it's also patience. I mean, I'm kind of down that path. I haven't really kind of fused my passions and my livelihood yet, but it's just having those patience of like, and it's funny how things work out too. It's like my same passions when I was younger, which is like being outdoors and animals and movement. I'm like a hyperactive person. It's just funny how that kind of fuses its way and finds myself. I had a career, successful career for a little bit in finance as an equity analysis and in corporate finance. And then like it just kind of found me. So it's really interesting how you said that. And another thing you said was kind of your outlet is like going for a hike in the woods. And like, I think a lot of the audience can relate with this too, even if they're not as active. For me, it's running in the woods and having kind of your, I always call it canine sidekick, your puppy, your dog with you. It's just this innate feeling and it just totally connects you back with the energy around you. And before we unpack the process of TAO Dog Yoga a little bit further, let's step back and kind of what we were talking about and first acknowledge animals and the roots of yoga. So I'm going to read a quick excerpt from this blog called Shut Up and Yoga. And it's an article called What Animals Can Teach You About Yoga by Laura J. Pillin. And so let me just pull that up. And she writes, one of my favorite representations of the human relationship to other animals is embodied in Lord Dotreya, a revered Hindu monk and a master of yoga. He exemplifies that humans can learn from animals and the natural world by keeping an open mind and seeing value in all things and a teacher in all beings. Out of the 24 teachers he had, half of them were animals, including one fish, two birds, two reptiles, and 5 insects. In paintings, he is often surrounded by 4 dogs representing the 4 Vedas and a cow representing Mother Earth. Dotreya teaches us that natural gurus exist everywhere. You just need to notice them. So I thought that was a really powerful excerpt when I was doing research for this show. And I thought it was like a great jumping off point for talking about like animals can teach us so much about both the physical side and the mental side of yoga and in life in general. I mean, think about all the yoga poses named after animals, right? Like we have so many poses. I mean, there's downward dog, cat pose, cow pose, cobra pose, camel pose, lizard pose, bird of paradise, peacock pose, rooster pose, frog pose, crocodile, fish. I mean, there's like a pose for every animal. What's your take on kind of like the lessons that we could learn from animals in terms of yoga and its roots?
Yeah, I think, a little earlier I said that, like Tao is a mirror of myself, right? And we learn from our animals. And they reflect back to you what you're putting into that relationship, whether it is that energy and excitement can be awesome. Like it's so good when you're training dogs and there's a time and a place for really big, good girls, good boys, like big cheers for your dog. And then there's also a time to be calm and quiet and settled. And I think that, that there is always that connection and we're always playing with that. And sometimes you're in sync with each other. When you're in sync with an animal, whether I think of like dolphin trainers, like that's another one, dolphin. There you go.
Yeah, that'll be next episode.
Yeah. Like dolphin, it moving, through space with such an incredible animal as it swims. Like, I don't have experience doing that, but I work with somebody who does, and with working with beluga whales, and her experience and talking about it. And it's very moving. And that connection, there's this invisible connection. There's no leash attached, right, to a dolphin or a beluga whale. And same with our dogs. I do a lot of off leash work. But there's always this invisible connection that just exists in our energy. Sometimes it is eye contact with certain dogs, but it's really just existing in space, and their connection. They're always checking in. They're always aware of where you're both aware of each other in space. And I think that's true of the yoga poses. When somebody calls a cobra pose in yoga, like I envision that. I'm like, what would that look like? Right. And you're lifting your heart up and you're kind of slithering forward. And, I'm like a cobra, and maybe it's my natural inclination to animals, but I think we all have that in us, to want to connect to animals. But bird of paradise, when you say that, I know my bird of paradise probably in my mind doesn't look the way I feel when I'm doing it.
I think a lot of people could relate to that.
But when I hear bird of paradise, I'm like, oh yeah, here it goes. And I I do the wrap and I got my arm and then I lift up and I'm like, I'm going to straighten my leg. And it's just in that I lift my heart so big and I get so tall and I lift the crown of my head up towards the sky or ceiling if I'm indoors or outdoors. And I feel like that. I really feel like this beautiful bird. And I think that goes a long way. And we look back to the roots of that and the connection, and we learn. And of course, going way back historically, postures we do, the poses we do reflect, what those animals look like and what they embody. So I think there's a lot to that. And I think we hear downward dog and, I'm anything called dog. I'm like, oh, it's a dog, but some of them I think hit home for us differently. And for me, bird of paradise, lizard is another one that, I hear and I'm just like, pigeon. Pigeon's just such a beautiful pose. And there's so much emotion that you can let go of and so much you can receive in a pigeon. And that to me is when you hear those, I think we start to think of the actual animal and connection.
Yeah.
I think it works.
No, definitely. And I mean, just from you saying that, I just a picture in my head, I'm like, that would be an awesome class. I do some classes where it's either my eyes are closed or very light, kind of lightly closed. So I could just see just enough to balance, and just doing a class where you're just imagining that you're in each pose, you're the animal. And that'd be awesome. I know there's some poses, like lizard. And then even the cues sometimes I use, it's just kind of crouching like a tiger. And that for me, I mean, I'm an animal person too, so it might not work for somebody who's not connected, but with animals as much, but I could embody it. I could really feel it, and it's awesome. And then on the other side of things, I think animals can be said that we've forgotten how to move. And that's where this whole movement culture comes from beyond just yoga. I mean, I really kind of going back on a side note, which you mentioned before, really anything that you're mixing breath with movement can be considered yoga. I mean, even some types of more physical calisthenic yoga practices, which a lot of times I honestly, that's a lot of my practice. That's yoga. I'm mixing breath with movement and mindfulness. So, but it can really be said that we've forgotten how to move, and animals' innate connection with their bodies remind us how to move efficiently again. And we all have different biomechanics, so we're all going to move differently, but that's why there's not every pose is called dog something pose or cat something pose. And there's a different animal for each different movement to almost trigger, remind us, oh, okay, like a camel's back. Oh, like how a dog stretches in the morning. Oh, how a cat rounds its back. There's so many of these poses where we could get reminded by their biomechanics how to properly move our bodies. And so there's such a mental and physical side of it, that we could learn and grow from. And then in nature, on another end, because I mean, even if somebody's listening to this, it caught their attention, but maybe they're just not as comfortable with, say, dogs or cats, or they just never grew up with pets, and or maybe they're allergic to certain pets, and there's still this whole other connection with nature in general, the bigger picture. Nature can teach us so much. And there's a great quote by John Muir. He's America's most famous naturalist and conservationalist. I'm having a hard time pronouncing stuff today. What was it? Datria? Yeah. So John Muir, and his quote is, "The clearest way into the universe is through a forest wilderness." And I wrote a whole meditation on this. I haven't yet shared it on the show. Maybe by the time this launches, I'll share it. It'll be in the show notes below. And then also like the quote I referenced from the blog post before will be in the show notes before. But nature can teach us so much, like just stepping out in the woods, like you said, hiking, running, and we could get even closer to that with the animals that we form a bond with. But there's this bigger picture of energy. So my question is, what other yogic lessons can we learn from our dogs specifically that we haven't mentioned yet? Like for some that come to my mind is like rest, unconditional love, maybe living more present and aware and connecting with the world around us. Is there any that we maybe haven't touched upon that you are thinking about right now? Maybe with your dog Tao specifically, that he teaches you every day. It's like maybe just appreciation for the day.
Yes. And I think what you just listed are absolute key points. I think living in the moment, you kind of just touched on that. Living in the moment, our dogs are very present, and that comes in really with training and just living with a dog. They don't remember, they remember things that do happen. Obviously if something, very great happens, they catalog it. Something negative happens, they do catalog it. But in your day-to-day life, they just are in the moment with you. So I think living in the moment is a huge one. And the other thing that just popped to my mind is patience. Our dogs are so patient. A lot of animals are, but the patience that comes with the relationship and working with private training, working with individuals and their dogs and watching that connection. So a lot of the work I do is relationship building through the skills that I teach, and teaching people to read their dogs and look at their dogs in a different way than they ever have is something that, I find is essential in when I'm working with people and their dogs. But patience, dogs are so patient, and they'll wait for you. They'll wait for you to figure it out, and they'll let you make mistakes. And then again, the unconditional love, they forgive you. Some are more forgiving than others, but I always think back to my first dog I had, and I'm like, oh, that poor dog. I wanted to do everything with her, and I tried so hard. And then it took me probably I don't know, 4 or 5 years into my relationship with her, that I realized who she was, and I saw her for who she was. And on my own journey, I learned it, but I had some really great friends that were just like, try that. Maybe she doesn't love that. She's not going to play with every dog like you want her to. And the things that she loved. And once I let go of what I wanted her to be and actually accepted what she was and supported her and supported that, she was awesome, and she was so forgiving, because she's like, you don't understand. I'm telling you over and over, I don't like that, or this isn't my thing. And you keep trying. And I'm like, oh, so there was a little mismatch there, right? Maybe it wasn't the dog I needed when I was 20. I needed a dog I could take everywhere. And that's Tao. Tao's that dog for me. And that's what I need in my life, but not every person wants that. So really making the right match is important in a relationship. But if there is a little mismatch, it's like, how do you guys meet in the middle? Like any good relationship, right? Whether it's, a spouse or a best friend or a coworker or your dog, you got to somehow navigate each other and be respectful of each other and meet each other's needs the best you can. So patience is huge, that dogs teach that, and the forgiveness.
Yeah, no, those are huge points. And I think a lot of the points you were mentioning too, you're just saying that's like any relationship. I've read, I like to read some relationship books with my girlfriend and I, and a lot of the things that we're talking about now, I mean, it's like any bond. If it's with your dog, if it's with your significant other, I mean, it's super important. And another thing that you mentioned, being present, it's just a funny thing. A picture popped up in my mind. I was walking down the street. It was a few months ago. I mean, I see it all the time. And there was this Burmese mountain dog, and he was just like trotting in the middle of the street, and he decides just to lay there. And he's just like, I'm tired. I mean, that teaches a lot about rest. It's tired, you rest, right? Your body needs to recover, and they're a lot more connected to their bodies. And he was just not moving. And the owner's like, okay, here, put the leash down. Is like, fine, I'm going without you. Joking. And then the dog grabs the leash, runs up, puts it in the owner's hand. Is like, no, wait, mom, wait. You see that all the time with a lot of dogs, and it teaches you so much that they're so present. They're so connected to their body, and they're just so loving. It's so great. So let's jump back into the process for Tao Dog Yoga. What does it look like for someone who has never taken your class? Can we talk a little bit about the class structure? And I love the quote, and we mentioned a little bit before, a quote where we had a conversation before this. And it says, I like to laugh during yoga. My dog doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah. Can you talk more about the structure of the class?
Yes. And yeah, I love that sentiment. Yeah, that
You said
laughing.
it.
Yeah. I was like, I love that sentiment. I did say that. Like, that's awesome. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think, you're walking through the door, right? Like I try to imagine, because I know the feeling I had on my first yoga class. And then I think, man, if I was doing yoga for the first time and brought my dog, like I'm going to be pretty nervous, the anticipation nervous, excitement nervous. And then I'm like, I'm going to have an agenda about how we're going to do, right? Like, how is my dog going to do? And what's everyone going to think? And all of that stuff. So every person that walks through the door has that and carries that. So the biggest thing is when you walk into a TAO Dog Yoga class is, you're greeted with acceptance and a smile, right? And laughter. And who are you? What's your name? What's your dog? How old's your dog? Where are we at? Where are we going to have you situated? Where do you feel most comfortable? And a lot of times, like I have a weekly drop-in class. So a lot of people come and they're new, and people have been practicing with me for like a year and a half now. So they have their regular routine, and that group also helps to welcome people in, or virtually, same thing. The group usually welcomes in a new person, and we're just like, I'm going to have you go here. I think, this is a good spot. You can, you're next to this dog. And so creating a safe environment, a fun environment, a very welcoming and accepting environment is really key to the classes. And so what it would look like is you walk into the door with your dog and you're greeted, right? And I say, sometimes where you feel comfortable, you get yourself set up. So what people bring to class, what I ask people to bring to class is a yoga mat for them. And it can really be any yoga mat. It's going to get dog hair on it, and your dog's going to step all over it. So if it's your favorite yoga mat that you like to bring to the studio, I usually have my dog one and then my studio one, because I don't think people in yoga studios always appreciate when I roll it out and the dog hair just goes everywhere. In our class, you're going to have your dog sheds, you're going to have dog hair on you. And so that's a little different. So you roll out your mat, and then I ask people to either bring another yoga mat for their dog or a little towel. Like sometimes I'm running out the door and I just grab a dog towel that I have. Some people bring a little bed that their dog really loves at home, and a 6-foot leash and whatever collar your dog usually wears, harness, collar, and that's pretty much it. And then some classes we use treats. So I'll tell people when they're coming for the first time to bring a treat in, a treat that your dog likes, not necessarily loves, because they'll get really excited for that treat and it's harder to relax. And sometimes kibble, they're kind of like, or the regular food they're not that excited about. So kind of like a middle of the road treat. And that's class. So what we do is we start off with centering and breathing. And you have the option to either sit in a chair. So I teach a lot of different people. And like we said, not every pose feels right in everybody's body standing or on the floor. And if I'm teaching in a dog training center, the floors can a lot of times be not that forgiving on your body. So a lot of times people will start centering in a chair. Sometimes with really excited dogs, it helps to be seated up so they're not climbing all over you at first. And so people have that option, but majority of the time people are just on the floor with their dogs. They're on their mat, their dog's on their towel. And when we start, we just ask our dogs to lay down next to us on their mat. Some dogs, like if you have a golden retriever, I think every golden retriever I've taught wants to be on their mat with their person.
Yeah.
So we talk a little bit about breed differences, and then you have dogs that just want to just stay a little bit at a distance and watch the person. And like, that's who that dog is. It might be the breed. It might be that specific dog. So there's no, like we talk about perfection, right? So that's not, your dog has to be on your mat and they have to stay perfectly still. And you have to, no, it's like your dog is allowed to get up. You have them on a 6-foot leash. So that's the big thing, is each person kind of has their little yoga station. And depending on the space of the room, it depends how close we are. Right now I'm teaching outside because of COVID. So we're really spread out in that way everyone feels safe. But usually in a class, sometimes they're right next to each other because that's the room I've got, when we were inside. And everybody has their setup though, and their dogs aren't allowed to greet the other dogs. Sometimes certain dogs are very social and we will let them say hi to certain dogs at first because it helps relax them. I had one dog come to class and the dog is a therapy dog, and the poor dog just needed to say hi to people because the dog's like, this is my job. I say hi to people. So at first I'm like, what's going on? And then she's like, he's a therapy dog. I'm like, oh wait, next time, make sure he says hi to everyone first. And then, but really it's so that people with anxious dogs, a little bit nervous can come. People with overly social dogs that want to say hi to everybody can come and work on something. So everybody's working on something a little bit different, which I can touch on in a moment. So the setup, everyone has their own space. So the dogs are not wandering all around, and your dog is asked to lay down next to you. That's where treats can come in. You can lure your dog so they can follow the treat into a down. And I instruct people how to do that. And you can give your dog a couple of treats. Maybe they get up, you ask them to lay down again, you give a treat. And then we all seated and we do some breath work. So we just start slowing our breath down and changing the way our bodies are, right? We're holding a lot of tension usually when we first come to yoga class, starting to calm down. So that can be anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes of centering, depending on the dogs in the class. From there, we move into a flow practice. So we usually start sun salutations, like a warm up into sun salutations, balancing, and then we'll always throw core in because I'm a big core fan for dogs and people. So I'm always like sprinkling in, and everyone's like, I don't like core. I'm like, it's going to be in there though. You're going to enjoy it once you get going. But so that is about a 45-minute practice. So it's actually some yoga in there. And that will take us to about an hour with centering and that. And during that time, people's dogs will get up and down. They'll be on their leash. And a lot of times people just pause doing the yoga. They just ask their dog to lay back down and go back to the yoga. I've also had some people just hold their dog on leash and keep doing yoga and keep breathing and keep being in their bodies and relaxing. And you watch the dog stands there, and eventually the dog's like, I'm getting tired of standing here. And every signal my person's giving me is to be calm and relaxed. And they're not giving me attention for running around. So a lot of times, and they'll look at the other dogs who are laying down, they'll be like, oh, and I call that working it out. And so there are times in class when I'm not that I say to somebody, put your treats away. You're good. I don't think you need them. So let's try this. Like, I want you to just keep focusing on your yoga and just kind of not ignore your dog. Keep them in your peripheral vision or just aware in your space. But a lot of times the dogs are like, oh, you just want me to do nothing while you do this. So it can be a very interesting first hour with our dogs. The reason I do centering first is we really need to give our dogs the signal of being relaxed. The thing about dogs is like they live in the moment and they are like, what you see is what you get, right? Like they're going to be very clear and truthful. They're very clear. So they know if you're like, I'm relaxing, and your jaw is tense and you're holding your breath and your shoulders are up to your ears. Like, even though you're like, I'm relaxing because you're like, I'm in a new class. I've never done this. What's my dog doing? Like, and that's where my job is, right? To come in to really connect to people and teach them and like, think about your shoulders. Okay. Let them go. Let them relax. Because dogs aren't going to buy it if you're not relaxing. And I've also seen this in my class where person wasn't ready to let go yet. So the dog wasn't ready to let go. And they had some classes where it clicked and then other classes it didn't. And either that person, a lot of times when that happens, a lot of times the person will practice at home and I stay in touch with them because they're just the classroom environment. They're not ready themselves. So I have seen that if the person's not calming down, the dog is absolutely that mirror and will reflect that. So that's where a lot of that beginning centering is, to really take the whole energy of the room and just bring it way down. Like, whew. Then we move through the practice. And then after that, so we'll go through our full practice. Dogs will be up and down. Some dogs will lay through the whole thing. They're like, this is awesome. Like,
be an awesome time lapse. That's what I'm thinking about right now. I'm like, that'd be an awesome thing just to put a camera on and like look at a time lapse and like dogs are looking around and you're like, huh, all right, I'll rest.
Yeah, we did one week. I had someone do that for me. And it was fun. It's fun. I need to slow it down a little bit though, because it's so fast. Someone's like, I'm getting sick watching it because of movement. But it is cool to see, and it's hard to capture this. I have a friend that does photography for me, and we do photo shoots with my dog to show different things. And also she comes and does photos of my classes, and she does such a great job of capturing those moments of relationship and connection. And it's beautiful, and it's like, that's exactly what it looks like and exactly what it feels like. But it's hard to sum up unless you're in the space. I think it's hard to quantify unless you take that step and are brave and come into a class and say, like, I'm going to give this a try. So that's usually our first hour. The next 15 minutes, when people are first learning, I teach a calm touch technique that I came up with based upon my experience working with dogs and how they like to be touched. So why this works really well and why it's different than other dog yoga is we get people to a place where they're so much calmer. And also mentally, you let go. When you're trying to track what your dog is doing and you're trying to follow along to the yoga, you literally can't think about anything else. So for those of us with really busy brains, and that's why a lot of my friends that have started practice with me, because we're a lot alike, they're like, I'm exhausted. Like, and I didn't think about anything. And like, we were in chair pose and you were like working it with us. And like, we were breathing and our legs were like cooking and, our energy, and you're just in it. Right. And you're in that thing that happens in yoga where you get lost. Right. And there's just nothing else you can focus on. So I think moving in our bodies really works. And I've had that question before is it really gentle and slow? And I'm like, no, because I think it's really hard for us, who are like into our dogs as much as that we're going to take them to dog yoga, right? Like we're very much into our dogs. We teach them, we do stuff. We're always looking for the next cool thing to try out. We're in our heads so much. And I think that physical practice, when you're a physical person, I think this makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I'm just like, I can't, because I'm like, I'm in a Warrior 2 series. I'm like, wait, my dog's, and you peek down and you see the smile come to someone's face because they peek down and their dog's laying there. And they totally lost track of their dog because they were just like, I just held on to the leash and I'll tell them, I'm like, just keep doing the yoga, hold on to your leash. It's all good. Like, you're good. Let it go. It's all totally fine. And stuff. And another little, story I just want to share, because it was my first class I taught, and it's one of my good friends, and she was raising a guide dog puppy, and it's a little German Shepherd, and he was 5.5 months old. And she brought him to her first yoga class, and she's a really, really good trainer herself. And I'm watching her practice, and she has her little mat next to her. And, she's thinking in her head, my dog has to lay down. And an hour is like a long time for any dog, but really an hour is a very like unreasonable time to actually expect a 5-month-old puppy to do.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm like, he's going to move. And every time I teach puppies, I'm like, they're going to just do what they're going to do and just like be with it. Like they're young, and enjoy this, because 2 years from now, you're going to have the dog laying next to you, and you're going to look back on that and remember that. And it's going to be, you're going to laugh. Like, and that's the laughter, right? You're going to think like, my puppy was like licking my face, and my other dog is 15 months old. And like, we were doing yoga 2 months ago, and he's like pulling at my hair. And I'm like, what? And I'm just laughing. I'm like, someday you're going to be like laying next to me, and it's going to be calm. It's going to be cool, but it won't be this, I won't be laughing. And I laugh hysterically when I practice yoga with him. And I think that's so good for people. So, back to that 5-month-old little German Shepherd puppy, really skilled person, never did yoga before, which was also cool. So that's the other thing I love about this. If you've never done yoga before, but you love your dog, like this class is for you, right? It is for everybody, and it's accessible to everybody. And all of our classes are different. The yoga is always different every week. There's some variation with our dogs, but a lot of it stays pretty consistent, because dogs thrive on consistency in the training. But we thrive on some consistency, but some kind of like, we don't want to know what's next, or we're going to be planning for the next thing.
Yeah. There's a fine line between like staying present, planning for the future, and like learning from the past so you don't make the same mistakes. It's like our brain's a lot more kind of pulling back and forth and kind of recalibrating more than a dog's mind, who's a lot more just able to enjoy the moment. Yep. I always the quote, "Great day to have a great day." I feel like that's what dogs wake up to every morning. But yeah, I mean, to take it one step back, I don't mean to cut you off on the service dog. So I actually had a question, because I watched the documentary film a couple nights ago called "To Be in Service," which it's on Netflix, which takes you through the story of a handful of veterans with debilitating PTSD and the life-changing positive effect their service dogs had on their life. And my question is, how does the concept of calming your minds to calm that of your dogs work in that scenario with service dogs? Is it like reversed? It was just a question that like triggered in my mind when I had this. And I remember we spoke before this conversation, and I wanted to ask you, like with service dogs, therapy dogs.
Ask that again.
Yeah, sure. So basically my question is like this whole concept of calming our minds to calm our dogs. But with service dogs, it almost seems like partially it's reversed. Like the dogs' minds are calm, and they're helping people with, like, for this instance, in this movie, documentary, they're helping people with PTSD calm their minds. So it's almost like this, it's this mutual relationship, but these dogs are like these, like, I always say like ninja dogs, like they're just so like in tuned. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more on that?
Yeah. And so, thinking about a 5-month-old service, puppy that's going to be a guide dog someday, and how important that skill of relaxing and being calm with somebody is, it is so, so, so important. And, I work with a team of guide dog trainers, and I'm a certified guide dog trainer instructor. So, and raised, puppies myself and coached people, on how to raise puppies. And this is something that is essential to a service dog because they need to be able to calm down. But obviously, us as puppy raisers, we need to teach them, right? Some dogs have the natural ability, but the person is going to maybe need them if you're talking about PTSD and that kind of thing. But even in the guide dog field, there are going to be times that someone's trying to orient themselves to their environment because they can't see, they're listening to traffic and they're doing this. And the dog needs to be able to, and they might get nervous if you get lost, right? And you're like, I'm disoriented. Like, I'm sighted. And if I get lost, I'm kind of a disaster. I'm like, where is my friend? Like, where we're going. What train am I taking? I'm in New York City. And I call my friend Megan, I call all the time, like, I am lost. She's like, you're a stop away from me. Just get on the train and come down. I'm like, all right, now I'm good, but I'm a mess. So I can imagine, if I didn't have vision, right, and I got disoriented, it's even harder, to figure that out. So you're going to have these reactions, right? We all have these reactions because we're nervous or we're anxious or we're not sure. That dog has to be able to stay calm and take direction, even though somebody's having that. And then you talk about PTSD and support dogs in that way, supporting somebody. They now have to not only stay stable, but also interrupt that for the person and actually say, let me take my calming effects. And some of that's physical contact. A lot of times it is, and certain breeds are chosen for that because of that. They'll actually, get on the person's lap with their paws and ground them. And absolutely it is going in reverse, in same with the yoga, like, right, someone's up and their dog is calm, that helps to bring the person down. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Other reverses, the person's calm and the dog's up here, really wild. And it's like, can we kind of find that, like that invisible connection I talked about, right? There's some strain. So when you're on the same wavelength, it feels very good. But when, the person's nervous, the dog is going to have to bring more of its energy, whether it's calming or it's up energy, to balance that out. So there's not as much strain, and you can feel it when you're practicing yoga. And I'm sure service dog and guide dog users, they have this incredible connection to their dog. Like, I think with TAO, I have this connection. It's like, I know for a fact that the connection someone has with their guide dog is like 10 times that of I could ever have with my dog, because of the relationship and the partnership. And like, they are so close. They're reading each other's body language. So we talk about calming yourself and breathing in yoga to calm your dog. Like, that connection, that dog is so in tune. So that person could just, in guide dog world, if someone starts to get disoriented, the dogs work to help them stay oriented and find the straight line and find the curve and find the things that they need to find. So that relationship, even it goes even past that, but totally dogs will have to contribute more of that calming energy depending on the job that they have.
Yeah.
And it's not every dog.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. And for everybody listening, I mean, that's just proof that not only humans can embody their own secret yogi, like I like to call it, their innate energy, their connection thing that you're born with. It's dogs too. I mean, look at these guide dogs and service dogs. They're awesome. They're truly like secret yogis. They might not even be secret. They're just yogis.
Yeah.
It's awesome how well trained they are and everything. Yeah. So I find it totally fascinating with dogs. And I think that therapy dogs are truly embodying their secret yogi, and they're so well trained. They have such immense purpose in people's lives and the connection. So now I want to go through some common questions that I've asked some of the audience about. And this is some of the questions that came up, and also some questions that I have that might be coming up around this topic of dog yoga and connecting with our animals. So the first one is the differences in types of dogs. So breed, size, temperament, activity level, age when doing yoga. And do you have any advice or insight on that? Like if they're, say, looking for a dog, or their dog's a German Shepherd, but another person's dog's a pit bull or a Yorkshire Terrier.
I think the biggest thing is finding whatever dog matches like your personality and lifestyle. And I think when you have the right match, so if in your situation, you're doing that right now, you're researching
Yeah. Mutual
dogs.
fit. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's key, because I find if you have a mutual fit and then you just layer on training and like meeting the dog's needs of enrichment and exercise and nutrition and all the stuff that comes with being a healthy being, it's smooth and easy. I think a lot of times I'm called for training when it is a mismatch. Like the dog needs a lot more exercise and the person's like, but I work a lot and I still want to have a dog, but and then we find other things. There's dog play groups for them to go to. There's someone to come in and have them walk their dog while they're at work. And like, that's my role, is to help that. But I think finding the right dog for you, understanding the breeds, understanding what a mixed breed has, because sometimes they'll say it's a lab mix and you're like, none of the traits seem Labrador. It might
Yeah.
look that way. But if you actually look at the breed. So I think knowing your breeds is so key. And just like reading, like getting a breed book and just like reading about the different things and figuring out and like meeting people that have those dogs. Your collection.
Yeah, I have. They're cut off by the camera right now, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them right there. I found a few old ones I had, so I got new ones. But yeah, and going to dog shows, and I know before all this happened, there was a great one in New York City. If everyone listening in New York City, it was called like the All Breeds Expo, and you get to see like all the different types of breeds. So even if you're considering adopting, you kind of know like, okay, I like these characteristics beyond just the look of the dog. A lot of people are like, oh, that dog looks like a wolf, so I want that dog, and it's just totally not a mutual fit. Like find the mutual fit beforehand is super important. But also like you've spoken to or spoken about is that if you have a dog that may not be the best fit for you, but you find ways to kind of mutually, like any relationship, fill those needs. So I think that's great advice. And okay, so the next one is we kind of went in a little bit about advice for those yogis looking for a puppy, but what about advice for those who have a puppy and want to do yoga without their puppy jumping on them, but don't want to put them, say, in their crate?
Yeah, and I'm so glad we're talking about this topic of different breeds and ages. And because I taught a workshop and I just say, anyone sign up, right? And that's crazy for someone who's a dog trainer to do. Like, you should have all puppies because it's geared to puppies. I'm like, let's just have everyone. Like, this will be fine. And that's a true test to, can you simultaneously teach puppies and 13-year-old dogs? Like, I'm like, I guess I can because it worked. I think it worked. Yeah. So being able to speak to that. So how I do that is, when I'm teaching a group, if I have an older dog, a lot of times, I'm like, make sure they're comfortable. So I always bring like extra towels, and I'm like, if you want extra padding, like, because their body, when they lay for a long time, they're much more apt to do that because they're older, but you really want them to feel comfortable in their joints and you want their body to be supported. Whereas a puppy's not going to stay still most of the time. So a lot of times I'll bring some things for dogs to chew on, but a lot of times if I know puppies are coming, like bully sticks, or, some people have brought like frozen marrow bones to my classes, and I'm like, it's your space. Like, no one else can be practicing next to your dog chewing on something. So, or just different, they'll get a bone and stuff it with something, or, a Kong toy and something that the dog can be occupied with. And, like, the same friend who had that 5-month-old German Shepherd is now on her next puppy she's raising. And she came to class last week and she brought a bone for the puppy. The puppy's only 3 months old, really nice puppy. But she goes, and she kind of said, I'm getting back into my practice, since we haven't been practicing a little bit lately. She's like, I'm a little getting back into it. So my puppy, I don't mind being distracted. She brought something to chew on. The puppy just chewed on it the whole time. And then sometimes it would get up and look around and then go back to it. And so having something that your puppy really, really likes that can last. And if you're practicing or you're doing one of my videos is a good example on YouTube or something like that, and you get 20 minutes into it and your puppy was good for 20 minutes. And then it's like, that was it. That's it. You don't have to, you can either just end the session and come back to the video again and see if next week you can do more of the video with your puppy relaxing. So having something that they can chew on and work on really, really helps with the puppies. As like I said, I'd have like an 8-month-old puppy in a group. And, I also had another woman she, her puppy wasn't interested in chewing on something. And then what do? Right? Your puppy's in your space, licking you. I think she was in a Warrior 2, and like her golden was like 7 months old, and it put its paws like on her leg. And I'm like, I'm like, you're good. I was like, let your dog do that. Like, there's no reason. She's not knocking you over. You've practiced yoga a bunch. I'm like, it's all good. And so now I see her on Zoom calls, because we go to the same Zoom calls, and her puppy's at home. And I just am like, so I'm supposed to be doing yoga, which I am, but I'm totally multitasking, watching her dog on Zoom. And I'm like, look at her dog go. It's like a year and a half now, I think, about that. And she'll start off with the dog chewing something, and then it'll be, her dog will get up and wander around. And then I see, like, she was in Shavasana and her dog curled up next to her. And I was like, so she's having moments of this connection, and she's working it at home. And she came to one workshop, and I saw, she's like, I want to come to class again when you're having class. And I've been working on it. And it's just so fun to see that, a 2-hour workshop, what an impact that will forever have on her relationship and working it. So I think using those tools like Kongs and bones and bully sticks to give your dog something to do, so that you can actually calm yourself down and not just be running after a puppy.
Mm-hmm. And definitely, I think this is really great advice too, because you know what, trying out different, like you said, like a bully stick, maybe it's a ball, maybe it's a toy, maybe it's a treat, trying out different things, because you know what, not all dogs like the same thing, and finding that what the dog likes. And not all dogs are food driven either. I mean, you might have an issue if you're like, my dog does not motivated by treats, right? And what do I do? And not everything could be treats. It could be praise. It could be, I mean, way better than I do, but I mean, like different toys and tools that they just find interesting and fascinating, and catches their attention and helps them. And it's not like a instant fix. It takes time, and it's a process, just like our own practice. It's consistency. And that's something we preach on this show a lot, which is consistency. It's the consistency of doing it a little bit each day. And yeah, so question number 2, we kind of just covered, is specific equipment. So you mentioned, and we'll kind of go through it. Let me know if I missed any. So you mentioned like some type of like mat or soft surface or a dog bed that the dogs will like to lay on and feel comfortable to lay on. A treat that's not too enticing. So don't bring the chicken breast or anything, but not like kibble or anything where the dog's like, I don't really like it. Something in the medium range, so they stay calm. Their favorite, maybe it's a toy, maybe it's a bone, something like that. Is there any other specific equipment, or the 6-foot leash? Any other specific equipment that we're missing right now?
Nope. I think that's pretty much it. And something that, as like our own yoga practice, this, like, I guess TAO Dog Yoga is evolving. So, each class is a little different. And I'm actually currently taking a canine fitness trainer certification online. And so I just did 6 weeks, and I start tomorrow with my next 6 weeks. And then there's 2 more sessions of 6 weeks. And so I'll be certified in canine fitness, which I feel is so valuable to teaching dog yoga to people. And it just furthers my knowledge and education with dogs. But keeping people's dogs safe and being able to know to say, this is when you go to your vet, this is when you go to a chiropractor vet, this is when or this is the stretch. If your dog had a knee replacement, you don't do this. Or if your dog has arthritis in their spine, we want to be careful of this, or watch this movement. So that's key for me in educating, is continuing to educate myself, to be better for others. So I think, all the equipment is what you need, but having maybe a second yoga mat for your dog is kind of what I'm starting to go to. And before COVID, I have a whole stash of them. So people, and, I disinfect them every time and everything. But now I'm having people bring 2, because we're starting to work on, in some of our classes, is some core work and some core exercise. And you really want good footing. So important with your dog, that they're not slipping and sliding around on a slippery floor or like a slippery towel when you're trying to move them, because we don't want anyone to get injured. So as it evolves, depending on what I'm going to be teaching and what directions I start to go in, I may have classes that are just focused on that. I might have classes that are just focused on the relaxation part, to be determined. But I think in the class, the other thing I didn't touch upon when we talked about class structure is, we center, we do the yoga, and then there's about 15 minutes where we do the calm touch. And that calm touch that I teach people with their dogs, I do a whole series of stretches based upon the calm touch. So when people first come in, the dogs are laying down, you're really close to your dog, and I talk you through how to handle your dog, working at their center and moving out to their feet and their tail. And then from there, all the stretches are built upon the same rhythm that we use and same directional cues for the dog. And we go a whole series of stretches. So your dog in each class will definitely you'll get yoga, they'll get the training to be calm. And when you're first starting, you're just trying to get the calm touch. The more you practice the calm touch exercises at home with your dog, next time you come to class or next time you do the video, then you can do the stretches because your dog's already used to that.
Mm-hmm.
And all those are based on how our energy is. We're calm at that point in class. And when we put our hands on our dogs, it's all about that connection of touch. So I really delve into that during that part of class is physical connection. And you just kind of hit the nail on the head when you said there's treats, there's balls. There are dogs that love that physical connection. And that is their favorite part of class. So I do feel like it's so important. The beginning of class, we're not touching them a lot because sometimes that will actually activate dogs. So when we're moving through our yoga practice, you have a dog that loves to be touched like that. You touch them, they're going to touch you. You touch it, and then they're just like doing this for an hour. And some people love it. And I'm like,
you're it.
Yeah. And some people are like, I just love it. I don't care. I'm like, go for it. Like they'll do a forward fold over their dog because their dog is there. And I have some awesome pictures of people doing that. And that's their practice, right? And that's that no perfection, right? Your dog isn't perfectly laying down on a mat. Your dog can be interactive with you if you want that experience and it works for your relationship. But I do really like to have for the dogs, us touching them because that is training. Being able to physically touch your dog and communicate with your dog through touch and really meaningful, trusting touch is key. It changes the way people's dogs react at vet hospitals. If your dog has an emergency and you need to put their hands on them, your dogs trust it. And, in my classes, I also teach like how to bring that into real life. Cause right, that's what we're here to do. And that's what, your goal is in the podcast. Like even in the dog yoga, I'm like, how do you use this in your dog? How do you go to the vet and use this? And people are like, wait a second, you use this at the vet? I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. And my dog is so relaxed by the time my vet gets there. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, just petting her, like he doesn't need to know necessarily. But, my vet actually, because of how my dogs are, he's like, what are you doing? And so we meet and we collaborate on some stuff because it's such a cool technique. And it can grow. When I'm with puppies, we do a little bit of it. We're not going to do a full 10 minutes of touch because the little puppies, like they're going to be good for like 3. And then maybe you need to let your leash out and let them stand up and then you do it again. So that all ties into it. If you bring a 5-month-old puppy or you have the 13-year-old dog, I will give people cues on how to handle each of those during the calm touch. And then we all do Shavasana together. Yeah. So the class always ends with Shavasana. We play a song. The song's different every week. And people lay on their backs in a room full of other people and their dogs. And it is the coolest, most moving experience for me because the level of trust that you have to have for every being in that room to lay on your back and be that vulnerable with your dog is just like, there's nothing else like it. It is the coolest.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Yeah. And I have so many questions on that. So we're going to dive back into the questions from the audience in a sec. But that topic of touch was something that I wanted to cover with you specifically. And I'm sure do you have some like YouTube videos that the audience could check out that we can link to on that? Or are you doing some in the future?
I'll be doing some in the future. I want to do one specifically on just the calm touch. So what it will be is teaching people just to breathe and center. So we'll do the centering part of our class because that's essential before you're going to put your hands on your dog and then do that. And so it'll probably be about like a 10-15 minute video, which is perfect for people to do daily or whenever they want to do it. Yep. That'll be.
Yeah, no, definitely awesome. And so stay tuned and follow you, Behavior Unleashed on YouTube. You have your Instagram channel too. We'll have all this in the show notes and we'll cover this at the end, but more on the touch part. If somebody wanted to implement some of the strategies, and I think this is so prevalent, you said it perfectly. It's like, this is what we're trying to do with the show is like, take the lessons of yoga and meditation into the real world. And for dogs, you're just showing that you could take this calm touch when they go to the vets, where a lot of dogs freak out when they go to the vet. I mean, a lot of people freak out when they need their blood taken. They go to the doctors. and being able to calm yourself, it's the same thing. We're all living creatures. We're all part of the same energy field. So more on this calm touch, what are like, is there any like specific things that you could share with the audience right now on just like maybe one touch point that would calm their dogs if their dog's sitting by their lap like Tao is right now with you?
I think the biggest place to start is just taking, if your dog is, because a lot of people have their dog laying on the couch, they're watching TV at night or whatever, or your dog's on the ground on their bed, is just taking two hands and placing them, like if your dog's laying on their side, like one on where their shoulder meets their spine, their back, and like one towards their hip, and just closing your eyes and like taking 3 deep breaths. Like I would start there. Like it's just this moment of connection. And I always encourage people, and we'll do this in class. Not every class do we do it that way, but you put your hands on, I call it land, like letting them land. And I take this really from yoga teacher training, right? Like when we're doing assists and I'm putting my hands on a person to assist them in their practice, I want to feel there's energy that's going to come back. So when you put your hands on somebody, you can feel whether they relax into your hands or they tense into your hands. And dogs will do the same thing. So it's maybe taking a breath, put your hands, close your eyes, and then take 3 deep breaths and just feel what comes back. And the first time you do this, you may be like, I don't feel a thing. I don't know what this Stefanie's talking about. Like, she's nuts, right? And then next day, you try it again, and you try it again. And you may not know what you're feeling, but what I tell people is energy there's layers. So don't think I'm going to have this big moving experience the first time you do it. And you may, and that's awesome. And you may be like, wow, I feel my dog is like so calm, or I can feel like, my dog is like nervous when I touch them, or whatever your first instinct is. And you just remain calm. But I really want you to think about the physical feeling of how your skin feels against their fur, right? Because that's the first layer. So what does it feel like when you close your eyes to put your hands on your dog? Okay. And then go below that. Like, can you feel temperature? Is it warm? Is it cool? And then it's just like, you're not really pushing, but like just the intention of, can you feel their skin? And then can you feel their muscles all the way down, to their bone? And then from there, like, what do you get? So feeling physically, I think sometimes that idea of energy and connection, when you've never felt it with an animal, and that feeling of energy and connection we have with people too, and it's collective when we teach yoga, but with an animal, if you've never had that experience, it takes some time to actually be open to it and try it and just be like, I'm just going to see what I feel. And there are definitely dog people out there that are going to listen to me and be like, she is so woo-woo and she is so, and I'm like, I am. I tell my students, I'm like, some of you going to think I'm kind of nuts, but
just try it out. I mean,
yeah, just try it out.
If you're afraid of dogs too, it'd be a great way to kind of overcome your fear. It's just when you feel that connection.
Yeah. And it's just a simple exercise. And then you start to move, and we move in a really slow way. And when people are doing TAO Dog Yoga, they've never touched their dog in that way before. They've never moved that slowly, because the other thing I'll work on is like, close your eyes, and I want you just to bring all of your attention just to your hand. And I want you just to move it as slow as possible. And then I'll tell people, I'm like, the whole room's not breathing, right? Because they're so focused on their hand. So I'm like, take a deep breath. They're like, I was holding my breath, right? And it's just it's being really present. And it doesn't have to be, you do an hour yoga practice of TAO Dog Yoga every day. Like, you can take bits and pieces, and that's the real life stuff. Is like, every night before bed, my hands are on my dogs. All of them, I'll usually get on the floor. They're curled up on their bed. I'll do a series of stretches, but sometimes I just need the grounding. So I'm just like, I put my hands on them, and who doesn't snuggle their dog? Like, everyone's doing it, but a lot of times we're doing it for us, and we don't get that feedback. It's like when you meet somebody, some people don't like being hugged, but I think being hugged is an important thing in life. I had a yoga teacher, and she gave me a hug, and I didn't know her, that well yet, but she welcomed me into the studio, and she gave me this big hug, and it was like the best hug ever. It's like, I'm like, but it was long, but not too long. Like, but it was like an embrace. And I was like, that is literally like her secret power, right? Like, I don't know, but it's like special. But what she was doing is sharing her energy. I was very clean energy and very neutral. And that's what we try to do with our dogs, is present this really positive, clean, clear energy. Like, I'm here to support you. Like, this is genuine. There's nothing besides me just greeting you with this hug or putting my hands on you. And she waited for the response from me. And that determined like the timing of it. And, the more you're into yoga, and if you're just starting yoga, you're just like, I don't know. I've never been hugged like that. Like, I've never been given an assist in a yoga class that was like, oh, that was awesome. Like, that felt amazing. You haven't had that experience. And maybe you'll listen to this and then down the road you'll have that and go, oh yeah, that I remember she said those assists are really good sometimes. That's it. So, you can get really into it if you're connected to energy. And like, I go to an awesome chiropractic vet, and she has this other sense with dogs. And so as much as I have a connection to dogs, and she's actually inspired me a lot with the dog yoga, because she's got this other connection in watching her work. I'll go see her next week, actually, watching her work on my dog, TAO. I can see the shifts in my dog. Like, I can see the energy and I can see the connection she has. And she has got this, but the more you tap into that, she's worked on that, right? And she's harnessed that, and she's done multiple trainings on different types of healing and different types of work. And so I have my vet I go to for other things. And then I have her, and she does the chiropractic, the acupuncture, the rest of the stuff, so that Tao and I can continue to do our conditioning work and our stretching and our core work without having any injuries. Like, she has something pulled right now. Like, I've got to get that fixed before I can keep working on her exercises. Just like us, if you have something wrong with your back, you're not going to keep aggravating it. You need to fix it and then build back. But she's got this sixth sense, and it is like next level. So I go there and I'm like, this is so cool, So I hope to give a little bit of that connection to my students who've never felt it, to at least at my layer, that I'm able to experience it at, to say, this is what I can share, and just a little moment of it, right? 3 breaths. Can you do it for 3 breaths and just like be open to the experience of it? And, when I tell people to close their eyes, that's another moment of trust, right? Your eyes are closed. You're in a room full of other dogs and people, and you're just listening to my voice and the other dogs breathing in the room, and other people may be laughing because their dog's probably doing something funny. And to see the expression on people's faces, the little smile that will come when someone gets it. Like, I'm moved right now just talking about it, because it's just like, it's there, and it's very palpable to see. And it does. So I said, I'm going to offer this to everybody. For some people, they're just not ready for it. They're not ready for it to land. They're like, you're a little out there, like, relationship, like, I train this way, you don't train. And that's great. Like, I'll never knock another trainer. Like, that style of training works. This style of training works. I'm just offering a different opportunity to work with your dog in a different way.
Wow. Yeah, this is a super powerful explanation. And I find it so profound because this last weekend, I've gotten Reiki done on myself before, but I got in source point therapy, which is totally new to me. And my girlfriend practices Reiki. She's a yoga instructor as well, Devin Davis. And she's this like innate connection with animals. Like, animals will cross the street just to like go up to her. And for me, it's like, some animals love me. Some animals just, I'm just the average person. And animals that love me, I get so excited because I think they feel my like energy that I give out. But they're just so calm around her. And I see that with my cat too. But even now, bringing it to my cat, Buddha, my little kitten, he won't stop bothering me in the morning when I'm doing work. He's jumping on my desk, pressing all the buttons, chewing at the wires. And I just started giving him 20 minutes in the morning of just like very like gently touching. If he wants to play, maybe we'll play a little bit. And he's just calm. And he's just calm. And that energy kind of goes throughout the morning. Also, the point of source point therapy, which if all who don't know what source point therapy, it's kind of like the modern version of Reiki. And to put it in the most simple way possible, yes, it's like a modern day version of Reiki, as it is more impactful to certain points in our energy field that our minds recognize as our bodies, despite being off what we would consider our physical bodies. And we're going to do a whole episode on source point therapy, so we won't go into it too much. But yeah, have you had any experience? You said chiropractic. Does she also do like some type of Reiki or some type of energy work with the animals, with the Tao specifically?
Yeah. Yes. So I've had multiple different clients that have worked with her. I brought my other shepherd my other German shepherd I had. He was diagnosed with cancer when he was about 7. And so I wanted to give him, I knew what kind of the timeline I had with him. So my big thing was like, I want to give him all the comforts that he deserves for the time that he has, and also have good energy and good quality. And he was on so much medication to counteract the effects of cancer, a lot of prednisone, a lot of medications that are helpful, but just too many. And I'm like, it just didn't feel right to me. I'm like, this is too much. I need to go with more of like a natural way as well. And so she was able to give me some herbal supplements. So she'll work in that. She uses flower essence as well as acupuncture and chiropractic. So that dog I had, he did a lot of the supplements and acupuncture. That you really want somebody when they're doing acupuncture on your dog to know what kind of cancer they have and how, when you use the acupuncture, how it can affect the cancer. Because if it's not done properly, it can actually make it, give it energy, right? And give it fuel to make it. So depending on where you put it in, the blood travels and things are happening, like I don't know everything about acupuncture. As I said, I'm like, she's just magical. She just does her magic, and I try to learn as much as I can. But that's how she explained it. So she asked me so much key information beginning, before even starting with me and him, about where the cancer was and what I've been doing, and like getting all of his medical records. So that's very important. And I would notice he'd go into the sessions and he'd be quite anxious because he didn't know what was happening and his energy was up. And by the end of it, his eyes were like closing. He was sleeping by the end of like a half an hour with her. I'd bring him home, and my treat to myself was I'd always meet a family member, a friend for lunch after those, because that was emotional for me going through that with him. So a little of my self-care was connecting with somebody and just having it be a positive. And he would just hang out in my car and just like sleep in the back, and he was totally fine. He would nap all that afternoon, and the next day he would wake up like a bright sunshine. He was just like just energy. I'm like, I don't know what the heck that is.
That's
it would
great.
last it was crazy cool. It would last for about 2 weeks, and then we'd do it again. So 2 weeks was like, and I could see it. And I was like, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I've always been trying to be open. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, just try it. And like, maybe it doesn't make sense at first, but I was like, I've never had acupuncture on myself, which now I'm curious because of my dog. But the effects I saw, I was like, now I believe in this. I might not completely understand it yet, but there's something to it. And now Tao goes for chiropractic adjustments. So she was a breed dog. And so her body went through a lot of different changes with having puppies and recovering from that. And so there are different times I watch her movement and her gait, and I can see the way her legs move. She'll be pacing, which means, both legs on one side are moving at the same time, and then the other side moves, which is not normal for a dog. They're supposed to move independently as they move. And also she'd have like stiffness in her back end, and her back end would rotate from side to side. So that's what I'm seeing in her now. So I'll go get her adjusted with a chiropractic. And then I let her rest and I watch her movement. So that's my experience. One of my other clients comes to dog yoga with both of her dogs. And she started as a training client, now has become like a dog yoga friend and, and more. So she goes to this vet. It's Dr. Amy Matthews is the vet, and she's All Creatures Wise and Wonderful in Granby, Connecticut. And she goes to her, and what was fascinating about her experience, and I haven't had this with Dr. Matthews yet, is she said, she was starting to work on some trauma with the dogs. So her dogs, for whatever reason, she'll tap into that emotional. And so that's like even more of a layer. And I was curious if my friend would be open to that, right? Because she was open to the dog yoga and the training. And she's like, this all makes sense, and the connection. And she started doing energy work on me in conjunction with my dog. Because she just was like, I trust Dr. Matthews because she's got that sixth sense you keep talking about. So she did it. And she also used flower essence with them. And like they both had to have it on, and very interesting, but I definitely should start coming to yoga. And there was a big shift in that relationship. And so she regularly goes to her, and that person now is going and taking human Reiki so that she can do Reiki on her animals. So, she started off coming to dog yoga and now is like learning how to do Reiki on people and animals. So it kind of,
wow. Yeah.
It's
That's
what
fascinating.
Yeah, it's what you make it. And I think it's being open, right? You just come to that first dog yoga class, and have the experience. Like, let go of expectations. And I always say that in the first class, people like, let go of expectations and the shoulds, and just let yourself have this, and like be open to the moments of it. And it might be hinting and fleeting, those moments of connection, but the more you tap into it, the more and more you'll see it, and it becomes available.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the lessons that you just said, the things that work, the lesson is that the things that work for us humans, I mean, we are living creatures as well, and more dogs are living creatures as well. And a lot of the things that work for us work for animals. If that's energy work, is that chiropractic, if that's proper diet and supplementation, if that's past traumas and treating those traumas, if that's acupuncture, like a lot of those things, like dogs are living creatures, our animals are living creatures, and a lot of the things that help us would help your dog. And I think that's an important lesson to kind of, it's this mutual relationship. There's no hierarchy at all in life. So let's dive back into the common questions, or the questions from the audience that they've asked. So you mentioned you play some music in Shavasana. So what's the best type of music to calm your dogs that you found in your experience?
So I'll use some of the more traditional Shavasana songs that you'll find in a yoga class. And I'll also like use just songs that kind of like speak to me, that make sense to me, that move me. And some of them, like I've used versions of Stand By Me, just slow versions. There's another one I like to use that talks about, it kind of hints on love and connection, and it's very rhythmic. So I try to pick songs that are, connection based, or very, very rhythmic, calming songs. So all of them will have that where you kind of can lose yourself in them a little bit. So I'll either have it be where there's not a lot of words, or if I'm going to choose a song with words, it's going to have that more of an emotional impact.
Okay. So it sounds like most of the songs that are coming for us are also coming for your dog. And that kind of leads into my next question, which is breath work, because you've mentioned something off this recording right now, that certain breath works you found through your experience that dogs respond differently. Like I was just doing a breath work session before this, which is breath of fire, and I'm sure that would excite my dog or any animal or anybody around you. Just like it creates energy within us. So what's your experience in breath work, if we're going to practice that?
Yeah. So I think any of the energy building ones, or like lion's breath, you're like, trying to be like if we were to do that, like in a goddess in the middle of a class and the dogs are all calm, that would be, they would really be like, what? And they all jump up and be like, what are you guys doing? So I don't teach those as much in class. Some dogs don't really care. Like Tao, I could do anything at home. When we practice, and she doesn't really care. She's just she's just done it a lot with me, and it just works for her. But we don't do a lot of, the energy building breath. It's more like Ujjayi breath I'll teach to students, but even beginning students, it is just breathing in and out through your nose and taking deep breaths, and talking to them about taking a deep breath and filling up, from your belly to your ribs, all the way up to your throat and back down. Teaching people just to actually breathe fully is usually my starting point. And then any calming breaths I'll also teach in. There's a lot of breath with our movement. So teaching people to link their breath and movement, when you're coming up, you inhale. As you go down, you exhale. Making their breath make sense to the movements is really kind of what I key in. So more of like a steady, long breath, and trying to remind them when they're holding their breath, right? You feel the whole room kind of pausing for a moment. You're like, and take a big inhale and let it go. So that's more what I lean to with the dog yoga.
Okay. So yeah, it sounds like the same thing with music. It's like the things that work to calm us, work to calm our dogs. And okay, what about the best places to practice? And now this kind of entails practicing with other dogs. Any advice? You gave some before, but just to kind of sum that up, like what best practices if somebody's practicing on their own? Is it in their home? Is it outside in the park? Where? And then what if they're doing it with, like, say, friends or other dogs nearby?
So I think if you're practicing at home, you have a couple options. If you don't plan to come to a live class and you just plan to have a home practice with your dog, you can have them just wander around your room. So I usually will like have my dog just in like my yoga space, which is like just a little landing area upstairs, and it's closed off. There's a gate at the bottom, and that so they can have some less room, and they're just sharing space. So you can let it be like that. Or what I really prefer to do is I keep them on a 6-foot leash and encourage them to stay with me. Because I'll take Tao, like Tao and I taught in Central Park. And so we rode the train down and went into the city and got to Central Park, and we showed up there. And it's like, if I had never had her on a leash, now she's not used to being on leash doing yoga with me. So that's where the training comes in is if you're the person that wants to meet up at a friend's house and do this with their dogs, if you want to go meet at parks with your friends and practice together, you really want to teach your dog that when we practice yoga, it's on a 6-foot leash. And I always bring a little towel in my backpack, and that's her little station. So she knows, like, we showed up in Central Park and she's like, this is super exciting. And of course she probably thought we'd be like walking the park, which we did. And we explored a little, and she was excited. And then I rolled out the mat and I put some music on, I was waiting for people, and she's just like, and a lot of times in that I'll bring a couple treats. Remember the mat thing? A couple treats. Like last week I started teaching in my lawn, and that's where she plays. So I got my leash out, I got my mat out, gave her a couple treats. I went back inside and she was still on her place waiting for me. She's like, we're doing this in the yard today? Like, cool. So, I think if you're really looking to do it, the 6-foot leash, teaching them to really be next to you is what's going to transfer over. But you don't have to do that. But in our classroom setting, if you plan to ever do it with other people, I really recommend the 6-foot leash and a mat that lets them know this is what we're doing together.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And this is the last question. It's kind of funny. My dog just wants to lay on my mat and won't stop licking me. It's cute, but how can I get him to lay by my side calmly when I practice yoga? And I think we covered this through the whole episode. I think if the dog's, correct me if I'm wrong, like nonstop, he's a licker. Those dogs are just lickers. They just want to lick everything. They just, I think having something like the toy or the chew toy would be kind of like the best advice for a dog like that. Is that correct? Or
I would agree to start off with, because what's happening is the dog is getting really activated, especially when you start moving. So really making sure you're calm and centered before you move. And a lot of times when I transition people from breathing and centering to movement, we do it really slow. So I'll tell your dog to stay. We're going to find downward facing dog. Play your hands. How slow can you move into it? Keep, pay attention to what your dog's doing. Move real. So that can help dogs that get really excited. But a lot of times dogs that like to lick, their mouth is just busy, right? They need something to chew on. So I think that's a great suggestion, is just giving them something to work on instead of licking you the whole time, at least at the beginning.
Awesome. And I think we had so many actionable items that the audience can implement today. Mashed with this episode, we'll be doing, you'll be doing a separate episode, which you could actually run through doing yoga with your dog. And also, if you want to know more about canine fitness or canine stretching, your YouTube channel, Behavior Unleashed, and you'll be doing a lot more with that. Is there anything else in terms of entrepreneurial, your practice, your students' practice, and TAO Dog Yoga that you want to share with the audience that you're working on?
I would say that it's always, TAO Dog Yoga for me is always a process of growing and finding out which things people want. And so I think what would be most helpful for me is knowing out there, if you have a YouTube video, like comment on it. Like, I like the content, but it's too long. I'm looking for 20-minute videos I can do every morning with my dog. Like, I need to know what people really want. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is I want to teach just the stretching, because some people just like to do the stretching. Some people just like to do this. I really believe there's always going to be yoga in there, even if you just want the dog stuff. It'll be sprinkled in. But I really want to know what people would like to see more of it. And, as I'm growing, I'm starting to evolve. And one of my next ideas is like a morning, just like a core workout for people and their dogs. So some flow, you warm up your body, and then it's targeted towards your core. And then we work on our dog's core. Or a video might be like we work on hips. So yoga for hips and then yoga hips for our dogs, stuff like that. So you get a variety of workouts. And if you wanted to do one every day, one day you're focusing on core, the next day so that's where I'm at as I'm doing the canine fitness trainer certification. But really, I want to know what people want. Like, what does everybody want to do?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's like a big lesson for everybody listening and ourselves. It's like people, we want to hear from you. This is a super like consumer centric, as to put it in like business terms, but it's like we're tailoring this content right now based on the feedback that we're hearing. So speak up. I mean, if you have some critical feedback, I mean, be nice, but but really give us honest feedback, and we really appreciate your feedback. And if you like something, let us know, because we'll do more of that. And the people that speak up is what, and that we hear from are, that's the only people that we really know from, and that we're going to tailor the content towards. So so I think that's great advice. And leave a comment on some of your videos, and let Stef know what you'd like. I mean, and if you're listening to the show, the same thing. Leave a rating and review, or a comment if it's on the YouTube channel. And let us know what you want to hear more of. And where can the audience find out more about yourself? So you have your YouTube channel, which is called Behavior Unleashed.
Yeah. So on YouTube, it's Behavior Unleashed. And if you look up TAO Dog Yoga, it'll pop up in videos as well. I try to, code all the yoga ones with that. I'm on Instagram at TAO Dog Yoga, and Facebook, TAO Dog Yoga. A lot of our events are on our Facebook page. So upcoming, we have a weekly drop-in. I do Facebook Lives every Tuesday. We're doing a half an hour in the evening. So kind of you can fit in a quick half an hour before dinner, before you have to do something. And we're also doing here in Connecticut 3 different hike and yoga at the top of a local mountain. So we'll be doing, some outings together. I just, had to evolve with everything with COVID-19 to make it safe for everybody, but we're all missing that in-person connection. So hiking, we can spread out. At the top of the mountain, we can spread out. So, kind of doing these things. So you can find all of that on my Facebook page. And then more about me is taodogyoga.com. And,
awesome.
my bio's up there, and my email is also there. So if people have any other questions or want anything or just want to chat, I'm happy to do that as well.
Awesome. And I promise I'll be there in Connecticut to go hiking. It's not too far once I have a dog to join you on those trips. I love hiking and being out in nature, and especially with when I have my canine sidekick. Right now, I don't think Buddha is up to it, my little kitten. But Stefanie, thank you so much for your time and the extra time. I really appreciate it, and I'm super grateful for it. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing your life and Tao's life as a secret yogi.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for having us. This was great.
Thank you all so much for being here. I am truly grateful for your time, and all of you have taken part in the Secret Yogi Society to make life beautiful through bringing together a community of like-minded individuals to go about life's journey together. I appreciate you all that have left a rating and review in whichever platform you're listening to this episode right now. So if you haven't left a rating or review thus far, if you could please do so. Your reviews help push this show further and in turn directly support all those who have joined the Secret Yogi Society. For more information on the Secret Yogi Society, check out our hub, which is www.secretyogisociety.com. From there, you can find all the links to our Facebook group, where we are constantly supporting each other as a community and discussing the latest episodes, our Instagram, where we have short, thoughtful quotes and reflections from recent guests, and finally, our newsletter, which is a list of upcoming events, free live yoga classes, and meditations, and a lot more. So all this will be in the show notes below, and have an amazing day. Namaste.